what I mean? And, you know, which might very well be. But more importantly, and this is the point that I want you to see, in biblical narrative, when you interrupt a story, in order to get your reader back to the same line of the story, you often repeat the last thing you said before you interrupted the story. As you read the scriptures, you will notice that, okay? For instance, in 2 Kings, or 1 Kings, there's a story of the famine in Samaria, okay? And you've got this great story about you know, the lepers, you know, that go out. And it tells a story about how the lepers went out to see if there was any food. And then it stops. And then there's a parenthetical statement that says, unbeknownst to the lepers, God did this last night and scattered them. And then after the parenthetical statement, it says, and the lepers came upon the camp, which is the same exact verse before the parenthetical statement was made. It's a technique to tell the reader the story is continuing. I need an ah moment. Everybody get that? Uh-huh. Because I want you to see that, because the repetition has a purpose. It's a structural way to connect the story. But there is a difference between the two. Now, first of all, the tribes of Israel come, Israel being the northern tribes, they have no choice now. They, you know, there's already been a play in motion by Abner to make this happen. Now they finally realize that Ishbosheth is dead. So they come, and when they speak to them, they appeal on three levels. What are the three things they appeal to? The first one, we're brothers. Yo, man, you know, blood of blood, flesh of flesh. We're brothers. We ain't from the same tribe, but we're from the same nation, man. You know, we eat the same food. We worship the same God. We're brothers. So, you know, that's good. Okay? But what's the second thing they appeal to?
To his victories.
Yeah, listen, it's not like we haven't followed you in victory before. You did everything, you know, you were one of the main men, you know. Saul killed his thousands, David his tens of thousands. We remember you, man. I fought with you, don't you remember? So they appeal to the kinship, they appeal to rulership, and then they pull out the big one, God. They go, it's a God thing. You know? So the question is, if it was a God thing, why did they wait so long? Because sometimes you need to figure out it's a God thing after all the other things don't work.
Right.
And then they go, yeah, besides, we all know that prophecy. You're going to feed Israel. Now, by the way, this prophecy is kind of interesting. If we were going to do a so what, this would be it. To be a shepherd and a prince. I mean, in a sense, that's really the model I want us to think about. Okay? That's the model that Israel should have been following for its kings. You know, the problem is that Israel is in exile because its kings weren't shepherds and kings. They were just kings. They didn't feed their flock. They didn't care for their flock. They were not a good shepherd. They didn't spiritually take care of their flock. Whereas this prophecy talks about David feeding his flock. And David will ultimately do that. Remember, it's David that will establish the tabernacle becoming a temple. It's David that has to take the Santini brothers and gives them a new job. Anybody know who the Santini brothers are? Come on, this is New York City. Who are the Santini brothers? Nobody knows the Santini brothers? They're a moving company. Did you ever see the Santini brothers moving company? Am I that dated?
You're trying to say they're crooks, I understand.
No, they're not crooks. The Santini...
Because they're Italian?
No, guys.
Because they're a moving company.
No, you don't understand. What I'm trying to say is, what had happened was, once David had established the fact that there was going to be a temple, all the people who had jobs moving the tabernacle were out of a job. You see what I'm saying? I mean, all the guys who schlepped, there's nothing to schlep anymore. So he took all the schleppers, all the moving company guys, that was my joke, okay, and he gave them new jobs. He gave them, they became musicians, they became, gatekeepers or whatever. So David, in a sense, not only is a political leader, but a religious leader. He writes the hymnal for the children of Israel, the book of Psalms. Do you see what I'm saying? So in some ways, he really is a shepherd king. So they appeal to him, and then notice what the second time they speak about it. It's not just the leader, it's not just the tribes of Israel that come now. It's those who will make a covenant with him. And who are the ones who will make a covenant with him?
Elders.
The elders. Now, there is one word that is repeated 3 times in that one sentence. What word is it? Which you'll love it when I give you a question you can answer.
Which sentence?
Which sentence?
Verse 2?
Verse 3.
King.
Who's Karen? Put your hand up. Nice and high. King! 3 times. Guys, don't miss that. They went to King David to make him king because he was going to be king. I mean, you know, the Bible is very laconic. It wastes no words. It's really saying, you know, the first group just showed up. The second group, there was a serious business at hand, okay? The kings. And what was the covenant they were going to make? What ceremony were they going to do? We don't know. It's very small, but we can understand one thing. The monarchy is a constitutional monarchy. Do you understand that? David is not an absolute ruler. The kings of Israel were not absolute rulers. They had to live under a covenant. The 5 books of Moses, Deuteronomic Code. And that's the point we have here, that when David undertakes this, he gets anointed. No big description of the anointing, but there's this idea that Israel's made a covenant with their king. And that covenant is he provides a certain thing, but he's got to live according to a certain thing. Now, we can read a whole lot into this, whether they're trying to limit his power or not limit his power. That's not the point. The point is that the king is under a covenant. Deuteronomy, remember what I said before, whoever compiled this history had the book of Deuteronomy under his arm. And the book of Deuteronomy carefully talks about the king being submitted. He has to write out the whole law. He has to teach the law. So he has to be up under the law. And that's the difference between Saul and David.
I thought you were going to say Fidel Castro.
He just resigned. Did you know that? Yeah. That won't change anything. Maybe a little bit. Okay, so that section is done. And the next section we come into is probably not in chronological order. Okay? Chances are the battle with the Philistines occurs before this statement about Zion. But in some ways, it's a thematic statement. Because, you know, this section is going to start with the conquest of Jerusalem, the settling of Jerusalem, and his growth in Jerusalem. Got that? And we know that Solomon is born to Bathsheba long after he is living in Jerusalem and long after he has defeated the Philistines. So try to understand the section we're looking at, 4 to I think 7 or something like that, is telescoped. So it's not in a chronological order. So what the author has done now is he basically wants to show us the ascendancy of King David. He's anointed, covenant made, and look at how he reaches the peak of his power. So that's what this section is about. So the first section has to do with Jerusalem. Now I want to spend a little time on Jerusalem. How many of you have ever walked from, say, 42nd Street to Central Park? How many have ever walked from 42nd Street to the end of Central Park? Okay?
Does rollerblading count?
Yeah, rollerblading counts. Okay. Have any of you ever walked from, say, the George Washington Bridge down to 42nd Street? It's not that far, is it? No. What's it, 5 miles, maybe? Okay. I want you to understand something. The city of Jerusalem, the town of the Jebusites on that hill, is about the distance between 42nd Street and, say, the George Washington Bridge. On a clear day, you can see the George Washington Bridge, or from the George Washington Bridge, you can look down.
Now, when you say that, what do you mean exactly?
It's about 4 miles.
The length or the width of Jerusalem?
It's not very good.
No, the distance between Jerusalem and Bethlehem.
Okay, Bethlehem. Gotcha.
Got that? I want you to gather this picture, okay? And if you're a shepherd in Bethlehem, and you bring sheep out of Bethlehem, out to the mountaintops, okay, chances are you come as close to the city of Jerusalem as you would probably 57th Street to 42nd Street. Got that? So I want you to picture this, because I was there, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was on the outskirts of the southern part of Jerusalem, and I was looking south, and I saw hills just outside Bethlehem. And it hit me. I said, my God, David, as a shepherd,